In the 1960s, American car companies dominated the world. So how did they lose to Japan? General Motors alone was building 5 million cars a year. The Big Three controlled the highways, the showrooms, and the culture. But their empire rested on three assumptions that were about to collapse. And when they did, Detroit had no answer. By the late 1940s, American car makers were running factories around the clock. Assembly lines in Detroit, Dearborn, and St. Louis produced a flood of vehicles that quickly filled driveways from coast to coast. In 1950, there were about 40 million cars on American roads. By 1980, that number had soared to nearly 100 million. The scale was staggering. General Motors, the undisputed giant, turned out 5 million cars in 1970 alone, more than most countries built in total. Ford and Chrysler followed closely, each pushing millions of vehicles off the line every year. The Big Three didn't just build cars, they shaped American life. Suburbs stretched farther from city centers, linked by new highways designed for long-distance travel. Big, comfortable sedans with V8 engines became a symbol of prosperity. Advertisements promised freedom, status, and the open road. Models like the Chevrolet Bel Air, Ford Fairlane, and Chrysler New Yorker filled showrooms, each one larger and more powerful than the last. Dealerships offered generous incentives for moving volume, while manufacturers locked in supply contracts for steel, glass, and rubber to keep production humming. The formula was simple: build big, sell big, and keep the lines moving. By the early 1960s, General Motors alone controlled more than half the United States market, with Chevrolet, Pontiac, Buick, and Cadillac each topping 600,000 units a year. This dominance wasn't just about numbers. The American car became a rolling statement of ambition and confidence, backed by an industry convinced that bigger was always better. Detroit's blueprint for building cars relied on body-on-frame construction, a method that let manufacturers produce large, comfortable vehicles powered by V8 engines. This architecture wasn't just about making cars bigger, it streamlined production. Factories could churn out thousands of identical frames, then vary the bodies and trim to create distinct brands. Chevrolet, Buick, Pontiac, and Cadillac often shared these underpinnings, differentiated by chrome, interiors, or engine size. The formula was efficient, mass production kept costs down, and the same platform supported a range of models. The thinking behind this approach was rooted in the realities of post-war America. Gas was cheap, highways stretched across the country, and suburban life demanded cars that could haul families and luggage with ease. Executives believed Americans wanted vehicles that felt like living rooms on wheels, spacious, quiet, and powerful. The V8 engine became a badge of status, marketed as the heart of the American driving experience. Comfort was engineered into every detail, from wide bench seats to air conditioning and power windows. As long as fuel remained affordable and the open road called, management saw no reason to change course. Detroit's leadership operated on three core assumptions: endless suburban expansion, a reliable highway system, and stable regulations. These beliefs shaped every decision, from prioritizing full-size platforms to focusing engineering on ride quality and amenities rather than efficiency. The body-on-frame method allowed for quick styling updates. New sheet metal or grills could appear in showrooms within 2 years, keeping models fresh while minimizing retooling costs. High-volume sales funded bigger factories and aggressive marketing, reinforcing the cycle. For years, this strategy seemed invincible, but it left the industry vulnerable to shocks it never saw coming. In October 1973, the world changed almost overnight. Oil-producing nations in the Middle East cut off exports to the United States, reacting to American support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War. Gasoline, once taken for granted, became a source of anxiety. Drivers waited for hours in snaking lines, hoping for a few gallons. Stations posted handwritten signs saying "No gas today." The price of crude oil jumped by nearly a quarter in just 9 months, but that was only the beginning. By 1979, oil cost more than 10 times what it had at the start of the decade. For the first time since the rise of the automobile, Americans faced the real possibility of running out of fuel. The crisis hit the auto industry like a thunderclap. Cars designed for cheap gas, long and heavy and powered by V8 engines, now seemed out of step with a world where every mile cost more. In 1973, the average American car got less than 12 miles per gallon. Suddenly, efficiency wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Families traded in their full-size sedans for anything that promised better mileage. Showrooms that once celebrated horsepower now fielded questions about fuel economy. Demand for smaller, lighter vehicles soared, and imports, especially from Japan, began to fly off the lot. Lawmakers acted quickly. In 1975, Congress passed the first corporate average fuel economy standards, known as CAFE. The law required automakers to achieve an average of 18 miles per gallon across their fleets by the 1978 model year. For Detroit, this meant rethinking everything, from engine design to the steel in the frame. But the old habits and supply chains didn't change overnight. As gas prices climbed and new regulations took hold, the American car industry found itself racing to catch up in a market it once owned. The rules of the road had changed, and for the first time, Detroit was no longer in the driver's seat. Japanese automakers entered the American market with a playbook that looked nothing like Detroit's. Toyota and Honda, in particular, poured resources into research and development, spending around $400 for every car they built, more than twice the American average. This investment wasn't just about inventing new engines or features. It fueled a relentless drive to improve every step of the process, from design to assembly to final inspection. Speed was another advantage. While the Big Three took 4 or 5 years to bring a new model from concept to showroom, Japanese companies could launch an entirely new car in less than 2 years. This quick turnaround came from a system built on teamwork and constant improvement. Engineers, line workers, and suppliers worked side by side, refining designs and fixing problems before they ever reached the customer. At the heart of this approach stood the Toyota production system, a philosophy that reshaped how cars were made. 3 principles defined it. First, Jidoka, or automation with a human touch, gave workers the power to stop the line at any sign of trouble. Second, Kaizen encouraged everyone, from managers to the newest employee, to suggest improvements big and small. Third, just-in-time manufacturing slashed waste by delivering parts only as they were needed, keeping costs down and quality up. These ideas meant that Japanese cars left the factory with fewer defects and more consistent reliability. Warranty claims stayed low and recalls were rare. As fuel prices rose and buyers grew skeptical of Detroit's quick fixes, Japanese brands offered something different: efficient and affordable cars built with care and precision. The result was a new kind of trust, a reputation for quality that would soon reshape the American market. Problems inside Detroit's boardrooms soon spilled onto the streets. Ford's Pinto, rushed to market in 1971, cut corners to stay under a $2,000 sticker price. Its thin-walled fuel tank, placed just behind the rear axle, became a hazard in rear-end collisions. Reports of fires and injuries mounted, and by 1978, Ford faced a recall of 1.5 million Pintos, the largest in company history. Lawsuits and headlines battered Ford's reputation, while warranty costs soared from $78 per car in 1973 to over $200 by the end of the decade. General Motors faced its own crisis with the Chevrolet Vega. Launched as a fuel-efficient answer to rising imports, the Vega's aluminum engine and low-grade steel body panels quickly turned into liabilities. Corrosion and engine failures led to more than $1.2 billion in warranty claims between 1971 and 1978. Recalls followed, with over 215,000 Vegas cited for brake defects alone. Meanwhile, GM's overlapping brands, Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, and Buick, offered near-identical cars, confusing buyers and diluting loyalty. Internal division rivalries slowed improvements, while the press labeled these efforts as badge engineering. The immediate fallout was not just financial. It chipped away at the trust American carmakers had built over decades. By the end of the 1970s, trust in American cars had slipped. Reliability surveys, once a point of pride for Detroit, now told a different story. Scores for domestic brands fell sharply, with warranty claims and recall headlines fresh in the public mind. Buyers who had grown up with Chevrolets and Fords began to look elsewhere. Japanese manufacturers, offering compacts that started easily, ran clean, and rarely broke down, stepped into the gap. By 1980, Japanese brands accounted for about a third of all compact car sales in the United States. Consumer reports and J.D. Power surveys showed a steady climb in satisfaction for Toyota, Honda, and Datsun, while American models struggled to recover their reputations. The verdict played out in the numbers. As confidence in domestic reliability faded, the market share that once seemed unshakable shifted decisively toward Japan. The age of automatic loyalty was over, replaced by a new era where trust had to be earned, not assumed. Today, Toyota and Honda rank among the world's most trusted car brands, while U.S. automakers fight to regain lost ground. Global competition never sleeps, and strategic missteps echo for decades. The next shift in the auto industry is already unfolding. Will history repeat or finally break the cycle?